Hey Mike, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Jeff?
Fantastic. Really excited to be chatting.
Likewise. Looking forward to it today.
Tell me a little bit what's been going on. How's your week been? Where it's a Thursday? You had a good week?
Yeah, so far a good week, right? We feel the end of quarter, end of year push, right?
Yeah.
Full tilt just because the holidays and the shutdown is just about there. So you want to get ahead, make sure you have all those deals in proposal, have those contracts out so you can start the fun world of legal review, right?
Yeah.
Before legal heads out of office.
I tell you this. The holidays, obviously, on a personal level, are amazing, but business wise, it's just yeah. We always tell people no. December is going to be really bad. It doesn't mean anything in the world of B2B SaaS. At least that's been our experience.
Yeah, as long as you have that pipeline, you'll be okay. But if you're trying to generate anything new, no chance,
Not
right? You're
happening.
not going to
Yeah.
get those stakeholders in that call late stage there.
For sure. So yeah, super good to connect. Just to introduce yourself, and we'll love to hear what you're working on.
Yeah, so Mike Killeen. Right now, I'm the head of sales at a tech startup called Compliance and Compliance with a Y. So what it is a GRC software. So we're working with compliance departments, automating all those manual processes that they can face. For us sales folks, it's not the most glamorous, but it's very manual, tedious work. And what we're seeing is the market is primed for a challenger in this space, and I think we're stepping in at the perfect time to really start doing so.
That's cool. That's cool. Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about what's your go-to-market motion? Like, how does it work?
Yeah. So right now, especially being an early round company, heavy on the outbound side. Pretty standard approach in the sense of leveraging outreach aggressively, heavy on the cold calls. And really what we're seeing a lot of traction right now is LinkedIn Sales Nav, which with
Mm,
messages and really hyper creative messages with a bit more plain language, right? Using the plain language we're noticing is getting those responses versus spitting a bunch of stuff at folks. And then, of course, that third layer, those outbound emails. But I think it was a lot of folks, if you see on LinkedIn, they're talking about the great ignore, right? Where
right,
outbound
right. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
too aggressive. So we're being hyper focused with targeted messaging to those right ICPs.
Okay, that's cool. I want to break that down. We got people here who listen who really find this stuff interesting. So, outbound, you said you're kind of doing dialing and LinkedIn. Those are the two primary channels.
Correct.
And LinkedIn, are you doing kind of automated campaigns, or is it really just tailored, kind of handwritten messages, maybe with a little bit of AI? Like, what are you doing on the LinkedIn side?
Yeah. So at first we were doing using automation at scale, and what we saw was we were getting not a ton of feedback
Mm,
responses. And now what reps are doing is we have certain talk tracks that we're using or scripts that they're using in LinkedIn and personalizing it just with a sentence here or there. And
mm.
that's where we're starting to see that increased response rate. And I know we're shopping around for a bunch of different tools out there to see from the LinkedIn Sales Nav automation piece, but I think brute force
Yeah.
seems to be shining bright right
Interesting.
now.
And are you doing so for your list building and your targeting? How does that? Who's doing that? Who's building the list? Are you having your SDRs do it? Are you centralizing that? Just curious about that.
Yeah, so I've broken it down where each account executive, they have a specific industry that they're targeting, and then layering that on top of with Zoom info, intent data, and the website trafficking
Okay. Okay.
so that we can make sure it's really targeted and actually looking back at our client base who really is responding well to the tool and targeting those folks. For us, what we're seeing, the infosec, senior infosec people, the
Mm.
message really resonates with them, making sure the message is tight and to those people who it actually matters versus blind.
So yeah, so I'm a big, my belief is like targeting is, I don't know, 9/10 of outbound, maybe not quite that much, but so important. So want to just dive in on that a little bit. So you mentioned how you're kind of targeting people who responded well already to the tool. Is the tool have like a free version or something that people are using, and then you're targeting those, or is that, did I understand that correctly?
Good question. So it's actually our existing client base, right?
Got it.
And
So you're
actually
doing up. It's like an
gathering,
upsell.
well, looking at our existing client base and who's really using the tool, and then taking that information and relaying it back to potential clients in the market, right? So
Got it.
understanding, yeah, so we see certain personas really are using the tool a lot more than others.
Mm,
So
mm.
then using that information because the power user is going to be someone that this would really resonate with. The tool really resonates with those other folks.
Got it. So you're using those folks to basically establish the pattern of your lookalikes that you're then using to create. Are you doing
Exactly
that?
that.
Are you doing that in an automated manner at all, or is it really just individuals are kind of doing the analysis and then going and looking through LinkedIn to kind of based on some queries in Sales Navigator?
Automation in the sense from the organization, and
Hmm.
then just singling it out within LinkedIn Sales Nav for those chief information security officers or director of InfoSec, and
Okay,
then getting that messaging out from there. So the automation is at the org level, and then digging in, right? Each rep has a certain industry that they're targeting into.
got it. That's very cool. So you have, and that's on the, and so AEs are the ones primarily doing that work. You're not using a SDR team.
Currently, right now, lean and mean. So the account executives are all building their own pipeline, running their own deals. The beauty of being at a scrappy startup, right? They're
I hear
building
you.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, full stack hunter gatherers. I like it. So okay, and then on the are AEs also doing dialing and they're kind of doing both, or do you have like if you have a dialing team and then a LinkedIn team, or is it kind of just everyone doing everything?
These right now, right? 100% of the outbound. We've built sequences for them. So they're doing the dialing and also running through the demonstrations, the closing motion, and I'm right there with them, making sure as we're, going through that negotiation process.
Well,
But I think, yeah, the expertise is important, I think, in today's selling world versus the
yeah.
old world of SDRs can just grind.
So you're saying your argument is, in your experience, an AE who actually kind of knows the product a lot better than your typical SDR is going to be a little better on dialing.
Yeah, I think that's part of the thing that we're seeing with there was 3, 4 years ago, every company had a massive SDR force and they were just
Hmm.
hiring
Hmm.
more and more SDRs. And what you saw is people are just booking meetings and you get a prospect who goes to something with no intel, I'm not really sure, they just show up to something. Now it's a
Mm,
bit more qualified and you have someone who knows what they're talking about right from the jump. So I
right,
think that
right.
expertise really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's interesting because the SDRs kind of, they'll probably have a better nose for qualification, so they're less likely to set a meeting that they're not excited to take themselves. Do you see that?
To an extent, right? I think yes, the SDR wants to make sure they're getting something qualified, but at the same rate, sometimes an AE, if it's not a perfect fit, could do the auto disqualify. We don't love it, but now if an AE is
I
generating
see.
that themselves, now it's like, hey, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that person's moving along in the sales cycle and turn over every stone because they know that they're filling their plate.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, what's your like ACV roughly for your
Yeah,
business?
right now, right around 80 to 150K.
Okay, makes
Yeah,
sense.
so
That's,
it's a
I mean,
big
that's a
range,
really,
but in the
yeah,
startup, right? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's great. That's a really good. That's a really healthy ACV for an outbound motion. And how big is your team right now? I understand you're still kind of earlier stage, but curious.
Yep. So we have 4 account executives right now in the US, doubling that hopefully within the year,
Oh,
and
nice.
growing into the UK, EMEA markets. So
Okay.
really trying to scale quickly.
So you're the head of sales with four AEs, and then kind of try to double with like eight.
Correct.
And is your plan as you grow your team to basically keep the model similar, where you have AEs doing basically filling their pipeline and doing the sales, the closing?
I think in the near term, yes. I'm not married to that because in previous roles I've built out SDR teams from scratch,
Right.
so I know how to do that effectively, and I know if you do it at the right pace, it can be really, really a really, really strong tool. And also then you build your bench for those future account executives,
Right.
which
Right.
is always a beautiful thing. So I think in the near term, yes, but not closed off to building an SDR team for sure.
What would you be looking for? Because yeah, like a lot of people who I talk to and who kind of follow me are people tend to be people a little earlier stage, not huge executive sales teams, but people kind of like heads of sales, very similar. What would you be looking for as you're kind of deciding whether or not it makes sense to start building an SDR team or
Yeah, I think the first thing is seeing how strong the demand is in the market, right?
mm,
If it's like shooting fish in a barrel from an outbound perspective for the account executives, the time is right to start getting those
that's a good
SDRs
point.
in
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
So you're looking at those like efficiency metrics, and if they're very, very high, then it's like, okay, I think we could delegate some of this and still not have a big drop off in efficiency. Is that kind of how you think about it?
Correct. And also just the speed of deals, right?
Mm.
If the velocity is increasing, yeah, if the velocity is increasing, then it's like, all right, it's time because we got to make sure the account execs are going to be in so many deals and the bandwidth isn't there. Let's start looking at the SDR motion for sure.
Okay. What's the so after you set, what does your sales process usually look like?
Yeah. So we'll kick things off with a first round discovery call. And we've actually kind of shifted things because I think prospects are so tired of, death by PowerPoint. So instead, do a healthy amount of discovery, but then spend the last 10, 15 minutes of that first call in the platform, actually showing them the
Yeah.
tool so
Yeah.
they get a real feel and can, for lack of a better term, get their hands on the tool to understand, okay, this is something that I can see myself using, and the UI and UX is really sleek. So it's a good selling point there for us.
Yeah, I really, that's a trend I'm seeing a lot lately as I'm talking to folks. It's like, I think it's really hard to hold back the product to the second call. You're asking a lot these days with so many like product led companies. It's just not in the zeitgeist. I think it's really hard to do a full discovery and then, then show them a little bit of a demo. So yeah, that's really makes a lot of sense. Curious. So you do the demo on the first call or a little piece of a demo. Then what does it look like from there?
Yeah, right after that, then we'll do a deeper dive, a bit more, I guess you call it like a tailored demonstration, understanding those key pain points and spending most of the time in platform, right? Quick recap on what we covered, aligning on those pain points and spending around, 45 minutes just in platform the entire time
Mm,
and just introduce the idea, more generalized pricing. They get a flavor of, all right, here's what this looks like. Do you have an appetite for that? Right? Just to start understanding and gauging how serious these folks are. And ideally, you want to have more stakeholders in that call. And I think on that call is really when we're building that internal champion, where it's like, all right,
right,
this is the
right.
person that's going to be driving that deal. And I think it's so, without having that internal champion, you have no chance at the deal.
Do you have any like process or any tips on how to help your reps make sure that they're identifying and cultivating a champion in the sales process?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is on that discovery call. If you have that person who's really forthcoming with all those pain points, live in the pain, right?
Mm,
Live in the pain. Don't be afraid to talk about that, and don't just go to solution. Talk about pain, pain, pain. And on that next call, when you're going through things, establish that open line of communication, right? Having multiple touch points, and you can tell an internal champion by their engagement via email or
right.
text or whatever channel. Once you have that engagement, you have someone that you can lean on, and you can actually get a real insider info if this deal has a real chance.
Yeah, I love that. So, lastly, just like it feels like we're really understanding the process, which is awesome. What would you? Are there any like complications in your process around closing, or is it more just like a couple demos, get that champion, and then kind of all close over email? Is it usually just a couple calls, and then, or does it tend to be
I wish the
very,
world was
very
that
all over the
easy.
place?
Yeah, no, I wish it was that easy. But I think, right, we're a challenger in the space right now. So being
Right.
that challenger, you have to first off build that trust because there's other companies who've been in the space 20, 30 years and
So, are
people
you
know
usually
them.
displacing existing software?
Most of our client base comes from displacing existing software.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I think that's something that most of the time I think I talk to folks who are kind of doing net new, some new tool that they're not, maybe they have some kind of like manual solution or internal solution, but you're actually displacing an existing incumbent a lot of times when you're selling.
Exactly. And not being afraid of that, right? I think that's the important thing. And that ties to living in the pain. And you have to truly be an expert in the field to understand the shortcomings of their existing
Mm.
tool and your what like your sorry.
Have you sold like in your previous experiences? Have you had an experience where you weren't typically displacing, where it was more kind of just net new?
Yes, definitely. More a few years ago, right, in the CLM space,
Mm.
right? Because I think there was a lot of folks who weren't using any tools,
Weren't using
right?
CL.
So
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah, correct. So from the demand generation side, so from contract lifecycle management, education was the biggest piece, right? Educating on someone what this tool is. And it was interesting to see as the market evolved, right? We went from education to then, going head to head with other companies. So it's a different animal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest differences you've seen between kind of if your sales team is primarily going, I guess you'd say there's like three buckets:
Yeah.
displacing existing software, usually in a competitive head to head versus usually in no, just greenfield, no existing tool, just trying to get them to adopt a solution for the category. What are the biggest differences you've seen?
Yep. So I think displacing an existing software, you got to be ready for battle in the
Mm,
sense of understanding everything about their existing tool, their processes, what's working, what's not, right? So being really, really primed and ready for that and being able to provide them with material to share internally why they would even consider using another tool, right? That's so, so
right. Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
That second piece, when you're going head to head, being the most timely with your answers, and making that best in class customer experience, because half of it is just how they feel about you. A
How they
lot of the
feel about you
tools,
when, yeah,
yeah, the tools are similar, right? At the
yeah.
end of the day, for what they see, right? We see internally, we see the key differences, but for them, they want to work with someone they like, they trust, and so it's building that trust from them right off the jump.
Yeah, that's really really interesting because usually in head to head, there's just like when you're displacing someone existing, the people who live in the tool every day, they're experts in the category. And so, like you said, it's like you need to understand what pain they're feeling just because of the the deficiencies of those sort of incumbent solutions. In head to head, they're not that aware, and so like you said, it's at that point probably a lot more personal and relational. Like how fast this person, how much are they taking off my plate in making this decision? How much work are they doing for me? How easy do I like them, etc. And then Greenfield, any other like key differences there?
Yeah, from the greenfield side, being ready to educate, right? Being
Yep.
ready to educate why it's important to automate, look at a tool, get a tool, but also understanding when someone's not mature enough to get something or like they're not there. You can't force interest, right?
Right.
So you have to have someone who has that open mind, and you can get lost in the forever demos, right? That they're just not ready yet.
Right.
So it's
Right.
making sure that you get that person. There's a reason why they change. It's the three things: why change, why now, why our company.
Interesting.
That
I
those
like it.
three key things. Yeah.
Very cool. So, last question on kind of the context of your process. What methodology are you using, or are you using one at all? What
Yeah, right now the what I'm seeing that we're using the most is Challenger sale, right? The
Challenger? Okay.
Challenger
Yeah.
methodology. Funny enough, as we're evolving, we're almost backing into Medic or MedPick
Oh, okay.
rather,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because it's like you're noticing this qualification process. We're going with the Challenger sale, but you're seeing like, all right, here you just by accident we looked at Salesforce, the fields we created, and it was essentially
It looks a
MedPick, and I
lot
was
like
like,
my pick.
this, yeah, it's just too funny how it happens. It's almost unintentionally, but I think it's cool to see the evolution, right, at a startup
Yeah.
where you see that happening.
And is that just
Just
because like as you realize what made someone qualified or not qualified, you started adding fields, and then now after several months, it's like, oh, this is kind of med pick.
exactly, yeah, because we're like, oh, now we're starting to see those trends, and we can, have a lot more predictability from a forecasting pipeline perspective and all that.
Do you think you'll end up just kind of like formalizing the med pick or kind of keeping a sort of hybrid challenger cell type of pseudo med pick model?
I'm definitely open to MedPick. I think as we scale, like we're at the bandwidth we're at right now, I can jump in and get involved with every deal with the reps. But I think as you scale, you need to have a methodology.
Right.
Otherwise, folks, they'll be so reliant on other, leadership, engineering, things like that. So instead, I definitely think over the next year, adopting a methodology, whether it be MedPick or there's so many new methodologies coming out right now. So I think
Yeah.
it's about being on the forefront.
What's just a little bit more about this kind of I think it's an interesting thread is like when you're a head of sales, sales manager, kind of a new smaller sales team, you're aware of a lot of the deals. What Tell me more about why you think that methodology becomes important as you get more sales reps and you have to step out. Like what are you no longer able to do that then the methodology kind of replaces?
It's all about process, right? You're
Yep.
building process. Anything with sales, anything that you do, you need a process. And this makes it so it's repeatable. So whatever
Mm,
you were doing or those top performers are doing, you want to make that repeatable. And that's where the methodology comes into play, because now you put the what was most effective and how you're getting these deals over the line, that they're getting there. And also the way I think about it is if someone jumped in who had no visual, no clarity on that deal, they can jump in, see what's going on, and get right up to speed and help you get that deal over the line as well by
you're
having
saying
that
like
methodology in
like
place.
a manager, like another manager or someone else, or even yourself because you haven't been following it.
Exactly, right? You're spread thin and you need to be able to get up to speed right away. And you don't have maybe as much time to have that half-hour prep call, but you want to just jump in and be able to get up to speed right away. So that methodology allows for that.
How do you right now with a small team kind of follow the status of each deal?
Yeah, so we have weekly deal reviews, right? That
Mm,
we'll run through the weekly deal reviews, understand where we're at, and then also just because it's a lean and mean team right now, we have scheduled, daily, weekly one-on-ones, but at this point they're almost daily, just because we're getting into the
mm,
end of the year. So
right.
looking at each deal, and then within Salesforce, right? Each quarter we create a report that has the deals that we can have visibility to close. So then going
Mm.
through that with each of the reps actually on the call so that other reps can see that. And now it's like this repeatable process. And we're starting to see that, the trends that are there. So like deal reviews are so important and understanding that path to close. And the other piece is that's so important for us is why is this deal at risk? So actually
Mm.
poking a hole in every single deal, like why won't this deal close?
So what you're doing right now towards the end of quarter as you're doing these deal reviews is you've got a list of deals that you think can close by the end of the year, and you're going through them systematically and saying, what do we need to do to close this deal? Why could it be at risk? Is that kind of the process?
Exactly that. And each rep has access to this report, so they're looking at it, updating it. Then with leadership, we're looking at their. I know that they're looking at it on a daily basis as well. Just at the
Yeah,
startup side, every deal is so massive for the organization.
totally, totally. What do you do as a sales manager to help get deals across the line, to help your reps close deals? Like, what are the specific kind of tactics and actions you take?
Yep, actually, and when I'm in a deal, I think I can come in and be that bad cop, right?
Mm,
Or good cop, depending on the persona, right? So I can jump in and be the person who, hey, we don't have any flexibility there, and the rep is doing everything they can, right? So now you're playing, like you're working together hand in
mm.
hand. And the other piece is being in so many deals, there's certain trends you see so that you can just put things into play that a rep might not have been there, that I can
Oh, interesting.
jump in and give that sort of provide that information. But I think it's so important on the back end of that, break down with the rep why you did what you did because otherwise they're
Right.
not going to learn from it.
Would you say is your number one priority right now? What are you trying to fix or improve?
Yeah. I think what we're trying to fix or improve or get better, right? Any sales organization is more deals, right? But I think systematically or strategically, what we're looking at is to really get that velocity down, right? That sales velocity, continue to improve the sales velocity, and not have deals push because of shifting priorities or things like that, or be able
Mm.
to see that, right? We all wish we had that crystal ball, but being able to see those trends so that you can get ahead of that versus something pushing, in the right before the end zone.
So when you say pushing, and velocity, you're basically saying cycle time, like time to close. Just trying to
Exactly.
compress that a little bit and manage that.
Correct.
What is your rough like current time to close?
Yeah, I would say we have some that are really fast movers, right? Some that have gone 2 weeks and it's end to end
Oh wow,
quick close, but they know what they
yeah,
need. But realistically, I would say, traditional enterprise sales, 3 to 4 months.
got it. Makes sense. And so really, you're trying to standardize that as much as possible, so you're not getting deals that push 7, 8 months or kind of just get stuck in this like it's not closed loss necessarily, but it's not really moving type of zombie land.
Exactly. And that was the whole reason we created this report because there were some of
Mm.
these stale deals, and you're like, this has been in the pipeline for 2.5 quarters now. We're not really having progress. So let's start looking at these ones that have that path to close and let's move it out then. So we're not spending all that time. And you can
So
just
you
put
are
that
you
on, back end.
Sorry to cut you off. You're actually pushing your reps to close it if you really feel like it's stalled and there's not a clear path to get it moving again?
Yeah, or at least maybe move it to nurture, right? Not close lost, but put it into nurture. Or think about like, all right, what are the triggers or things that we can do to get them re-engaged? Like, why
Mm.
are they not engaged, and how do we get this person re-engaged? Like, what's causing this deal to stall?
Interesting. How are you nurturing? Like, what does nurture look like for you in your process?
Yeah, I think a few different things. One is sending targeted LinkedIn messaging, update, news updates, things like that.
Right.
And then setting up touch bases, like a quick 15-minute touch base with value, not just saying, just following up, right? We know that's the worst thing in the world.
Just
Uh,
following up.
yeah,
Can we
but
please talk again?
exactly. But a 15-minute call with, updates in the platform or something that we heard, a case study that really resonated, making it personal, right? And that's why
Right.
if you have that internal champion, you have the flexibility to do so. And we've actually seen deals come back full tilt that we've won because they stalled for a little bit. We got back in touch with them, showed them some of the updates, and they're like, now's the right time.
I like that. I think that nurture stage is something that, at least for us, we probably underutilize. So I love hearing your approach there. It's super cool. So you have, I know you only have four and this will probably change as you go, but right now, what's your approach to coaching your team?
Yep. So I think the first piece is building process. Process, process, process. I said that in the beginning, but
Yeah.
that the onboarding and making sure that things are standardized as much as possible. I think, right, there's always
Right.
curveballs that come your way with different deals. And then the other two pieces is a lot of call listening, right? Right now we're using Fireflies similar to Gong, but a call recording, listening to as many calls, getting those snippets for
Mm,
what's working the best, and then role plays, right? Getting
nice.
into those situations and being able to know, like, all right, if this happens, where are we going to go? And a lot of feedback and coaching on the back end of those calls to make
Are
sure
you
reps walk away with a system of understanding.
are you role playing with your like one on one or with your team in team trainings? How do you approach that?
Mostly team trainings, because I think
Okay.
when you're doing it in front of your peers,
Right.
right, you want to be tighter, be better, and you're more worried about messing up. And
Yeah, I
not
like
that you
that.
want them to mess up, but you want to be the best because it's a lot harder in front of your peers than a random stranger at an
Right.
organization.
Right. And when you said you're watching calls and doing snippets, tell me a little bit more about your process there. What are you doing with those snippets?
Yep. So we have a library, a sales library within
Oh.
Firefly, the Fireflies tool that just like highlights of calls. And then we actually have an all hands weekly that we'll share with the organization about, positive feedback that we're hearing on calls. And then also sharing, battles that may have happened, how a rep flipped someone, whether
Mm,
it's something as, not small, but this is the hardest part, like a cold call flipping someone, or that late stage when you finally got that confirmation, right?
right, right.
Sharing that with the whole team and making sure reps are able to listen to that, go through those demos and putting it into a channel.
That's cool. How many calls are you usually trying to watch a week?
I try and just before each call, right? I'm trying to review each call quickly. I might do a 1.5, 1.7x speed,
Hmm.
right? Making sure that we're able to really go in there, but realistically, and sometimes just from bandwidth perspective, not always able to do so, but let's say 8 to 10 a week.
Amazing.
Right, just because we're on all of them and we need to be up to speed, and sometimes it's hard to
Yeah.
remember one deal bleeds into the other, so it gets a little tricky.
Yeah, no, I think call watching. I'm the CEO now, and so not doing as much direct sales management, but it's so insightful. I think it's one of the most high leverage things to do. It's funny because you feel like you're kind of not doing anything. Maybe you're like, oh, I should be, sending emails or blah blah blah, doing work, but like super high ROI of time. And there's just something with like actually hearing things in the customer's own words or hearing how your reps do things, like just so much more insightful than reporting out in a call review or whatever.
Agreed.
Or sorry,
Right, and then just
pipeline
taking the
review.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. In a pipeline review, everyone's going to say everything's great, but in a call,
Yeah.
you can actually hear what's actually happening and learn those trends there.
Right. 100%. So moving to the final segment of our session, we call it rapid fire. And basically I
Sure.
just shoot you a question and just really fast responses and excited to learn from you.
Excellent.
So what are three sales tools that you're most excited about right now?
Yeah, so I think the behemoths in the space that have always been working really well for us, right? Zoom info, right? That's where we get so much of our data, the websites piece. I know there's challenges in the space, but it's one of those things. That's how we're building that pipeline effectively and targeting those people right at that right time. But some of the other pieces, things that we're really starting to leverage and use, I think every sales rep should be using ChatGPT or a form of GPT
Mm,
every single day, right? If I write an email, I just put it in there just to improve the quality of it. Just so, I'll
right.
write the email out as quickly as possible and say, improve this, make it more professional or elite. And like the prompt is really important, but it just makes your process so much easier because now you have a fine-tuned email. I would say write the email first and put it in there.
Love it. What's your favorite sales quote?
Yeah. So I think Zig Ziglar, right? All sales folks love Zig
Yeah.
Ziglar, but this is a good one. That's expect the best, prepare for the worst, and capitalize on what comes.
I love it. What's the biggest challenge you faced last week and how did you solve it?
Yeah, a prospect came to us with an RFP that was really comprehensive, and I think there were some things that were a bit out of scope for any tool that would be in the
Mm,
space. So then we had to go back to them with real expectation management and not just, with any RFP, you want to say, yes, 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 we can do all of this, but actually set the expectations right and be willing to walk away from the deal if, by
mm,
saying, hey, this is what we do really well. That's outside of the scope of anything you're looking for. As a result, right, this deal is progressing. And I think that honesty and transparency is building that trust. And now this deal is continuing to move along really quickly. So definitely nervous about it last week sending that email,
yeah.
but now we're in a really healthy place.
Every time I've done custom things that are non-standard or outside of our norm, I've always regretted it. As a
Yeah.
startup, you're always like, we want the business, let's go. And then you're like, why did we do this? This is not worth it. So it can be really scary though. It can be really, really scary. I totally resonate with that.
Yes. Agreed.
All right. Well, final thing, can folks find you if they want to connect or learn more from you?
Yeah. Ping me on LinkedIn, right? I'm active on LinkedIn. whether I'm prospecting or just, scouring for best sales tips and tricks, definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. Always happy to talk, provide feedback, or even just connect.
Amazing. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure. Learned a ton.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Really appreciate it. This was fun.
Awesome.